You're listening to The Blind Chick, an AfterSight original podcast. We're telling you stories about strength, overcoming hurdles, and living experiences. We see who you really are. Blindness can be an adventure. Are you ready for the journey of a lifetime? We are.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to The Blind Chick. That's Moses Street.
And that's The Blind Chick, Wonder Woman.
I also have a real name, though.
Oh, yeah, Penn Street. Who?
Ha,
Penn?
ha, ha. Yeah, exactly. Well, Moses, the amazing Shine Festival, music festival, is coming up on August 24th. Are you excited?
Oh, you bet. Yeah, I'm really excited because, I'll follow you anywhere. And
you're aiming high today.
And you and I are going to be doing a live recording from the stage.
Woohoo.
Yeah. So everybody out there, if you have any plans on being in Denver, Colorado that weekend, you have to be there. Great music, art, food, and of course, the feature, The Blind Chick, and more.
I don't know. I don't know if they consider us a feature, but
yeah,
but we'll see.
I'm really excited because the festival is accessible to everybody with any form of disability, and that is, and it creates this whole different kind of energy. So if you've been to a music festival, this is going to be so different.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And to get all of the details about this amazing accessible music festival, go to shinemusicfestival.com. And it's like 99% free. I think there are some like VIP backstage things that you can purchase, but for the most part, it's absolutely free. And Moses is correct. It's completely accessible. They're going to have audio description, Braille, large print, ASL interpreters. There's even going to be these amazing adaptive things for people if you're deaf and hard of hearing, that you can actually feel the music. I mean, you name it, every aspect of it is going to be completely accessible. And then the bands are just amazing. So come and join us. Yeah,
it's going to be really good. But there was an expense you forgot. Is if anybody wants to talk to me, it's going to be $10.
Oh, I see. Yeah, are you going to carry around a bucket or something?
With that bad joke, let's get started. Today's guest is a renowned sports writer. He has broken stereotypes in his field by being one of the few blind journalist in the sports industry. Dominic Petrillo, welcome to The Blind Chick.
Hey, yeah, thank you very much for allowing me to be here. It sounds like a great concert that you're going to be having out there. I've never been to Colorado. I've always wanted to go. Unfortunately, hopefully I'll be getting my kidney transplant in August, so I definitely won't be able to make it.
Oh.
And you forgot to mention that the $10 will be going to the person who wants to speak with you, not to them to you. So.
Yeah, well, I was hoping if there was
Oh, we are going to have fun. Oh, my gosh.
Well, the festival will be a lot more fun than a kidney transplant.
Yeah.
That sounds like a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah, you'll have to share more about that with us. Well, Dominic, can you tell us what it was like growing up in Philadelphia? That's where Rocky, dun 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 dun, and just how your passion of sports took off from there.
Yeah, I grew up with sight. I had vision my whole childhood until I was 32 years old. So I grew up in the suburbs of Philadelphia, but watching the Phillies, the Eagles, the Flyers, and the 76ers for a while until 2000. Then I stopped watching all professional basketball. But just there was, a lot of great sports teams. Everybody talks about how bad the Philly fans are, but they're actually, really really good. Well, I guess if you're part of them, they're really good. They can be mean to opponents, but you're supposed to be mean to opponents. That's what they're there for.
Yeah.
But just having all 4 major sports teams, plus having, we had a roller hockey team, we had a minor league hockey team, we had a lacrosse team, we had a arena football league team as well. Now we have a soccer team. So we have all the sports right inside Philadelphia. And it was a great town to grow up in. So it really gave me a passion for all sports. I used to love everything from, boat racing to curling to yachting to darts to I would watch anything on the TV as long as it was sports related.
Did you also play?
I did play baseball. I played a little bit of basketball. I did wrestling for 1 year, but which did not turn out well because being a kid in the 80s, I was a WWF fan, and that's what I thought all wrestling was, and I was never taught anything differently. So I would purposely try and stay down for a 3-second count so I could get up at like 2.5, and not realizing that you only had to have your shoulders down for a second. So I always got pinned.
Oh,
so that didn't really work a whole lot. But I wasn't allowed to play football because of some medical conditions I had. Although I always loved football, and that's what I write about now. That's my favorite sport. And then eventually, when I was in high school, I took up golf as well, and I played that for a long time.
So when you were a kid, were you one of those kids that could rattle off all the statistics and things on the players? And
yeah, absolutely. I rattle off. A lot of times I still can. Not as good as I used to be, but I used to be able to rattle off statistics left and right about all the different players from all the different teams and everything.
Oh,
Wow. I can really relate to the childhood sports because I was young. It was like 9 and 10 years old. But if we lived only 30 miles from Pittsburgh, and a friend's dad worked at the stadium and would take us to the games. And that's back when Roberto Clemente was with the Pirates.
wow, that was a long
and
long
huge memories. Yeah.
Yeah, it was great that, one of the weird sports stories, I tend to have a lot of useless knowledge. He was actually, obviously, he was killed on New Year's Eve going to Puerto Rico on a plane to do some charity work.
Oh.
But the last game of the season before that, he actually got his 3,000th hit. So if he hadn't gotten that hit on the last day of the year, he never would have gotten there.
That's right.
Wow.
That's right.
Wow. Yeah, that was my big memory. Was he picked up a ball clear back at the right field fence, and I can still visualize the ball going through the air, and he threw a perfect strike to home plate to get the guy out. Yeah,
that's amazing. I had my high school was Souderton, which is where Jamie Moyer went to high school, and he graduated in '84. And then he was a pitcher for the Cubs, the Mariners, and then he became an announcer at the Phillies for a long time as well. And his parents still live right up where I grew up. But my middle school tech ed teacher, the woodshop teacher, was the baseball coach in middle school, and he said he was the only student he ever had that could throw a perfect strike over the plate from center field.
Wow.
I know, that's a good arm. That's a good arm.
I know. And this is fascinating for me because I still love watching games, but I'm not a statistic guy at all. I don't know if I could name a sports player today, but I love watching them. I guess it's kind of like music. I like all kinds of music, but very few current bands can I give you a name on. Let's see. I know your vision loss is due to diabetes. This is close to our hearts because our youngest daughter also lives with type 1 diabetes. And how old were you when you started losing your eyesight, and how did you cope?
I was 32. I was 31 when I started losing it. I got diabetes when I was just before my 17th birthday, and it progressed extremely, a lot over the course of the 15 years because I didn't have medical insurance or anything, so I wasn't able to get the insulins and stuff that I needed. When I was 31, I was using glasses, which was fine. And then in about December 2012, when I was 31, I started noticing my vision was getting a little more blurry. and I still didn't have medical insurance, so I couldn't really go to an eye doctor or anything. So then when I finally was able to get insurance in June or July of that year, I ended up going to an eye doctor, and he said, "Oh, yeah, this is beyond me. You have to get regular medical insurance and go to a specialist." So I did that, and he said, "Oh, you have detached retinas." I said, "Oh, which eye?" He said, "Both eyes." And then I kept driving for a little bit longer, and then I couldn't anymore because I could barely see when I was driving. So my sister started driving me back and forth to work. And then I turned 32 in August of that year. And then by November of that year, I went to work one Monday morning. It was November 19th, 2012. And even with the magnifying glass I'd been using at work, I couldn't see the screen anymore. So I called my sister and said, "I can't work anymore. I need you to come back and pick me up."
Wow.
She came back to the office and picked me up and took me home. And that's the last day that I was ever able to work because, nobody, as Penn knows probably from being blind, it's very difficult to find people that are willing to give you a chance and hire you when you do have a disability. And when you're blind, it's 10 times even harder than just a normal person with a disability such as like deafness or other disabilities.
So Dominic, were you working as a sports journalist before you lost your vision, or what kind of work were you doing?
No, I had worked in a lot of hotels. So I worked as a motel manager at a Days Inn.
Okay.
I worked as a hotel supervisor at Bally's Casino in Atlantic City. And the last job I had was actually a car rental agent for a car rental company.
Wow. And so how did you go from that day to where you're like, I can't do this anymore, to actually getting into the career that you obviously love, that you're in now?
Yeah, I've always had a passion for sports, and it's kind of a long and winding story, but I'll shorten it for you.
That's okay.
From the time I was 10, I always had a premonition that I was going to pass by the time I was 40, and now I know that it was depression. Back then, I didn't know what it was. So when I originally got diabetes, instead of thinking, how can I fix this or how can I change this so I don't, get worse and worse, I figured, well, it's like my first thought was, this is how I'm going to die. So I didn't really care for the last 8 years when I did have medical insurance. Then afterwards, when I didn't have it, I just never took care of myself or anything. So it just kept getting worse. And then when I ended up going blind, my first thought, instead of being, this is the end of it, this is over, which a lot of people in my family that knew I had depression and stuff thought that it would be like the kicker that tried to push me over the edge.
Right.
I thought of it as a different way. It's like, well, it should have killed me. I kind of did everything in a way to make it kill me, and it didn't. So there must be a reason I'm still here. So it must be to help people.
Yeah.
So after a couple of years of not being able to do anything, I was able to go to a center in New Jersey called the Joseph Cohn Training Center, which they teach you how to use JAWS, how to use mobility and things like that. So I ended up going through that program, learning how to use JAWS a little bit and being able to use a computer again.
Yeah.
And I knew I always loved writing, and I still love sports because it was something that could never be taken from me, whether I was blind or not.
Absolutely.
So I decided I wanted to get into sports to try and get my story out there and help tell the stories of others. Because I can get my story out there and help maybe 100 people if I'm lucky. But then you see stories like Dak Prescott, who Moses is the quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys. His brother committed suicide.
Yeah.
And then he had a severe ankle injury where he almost lost his foot. And he went through a depression and he thought about suicide as well. And he didn't commit suicide. He was able to get out of that depression. But the fact that his story can help millions of people really spoke to me. So I figured if I could get stories like his out there, that would help a lot more people than my story. And you can forget about the Terry Bradshaw after it came out that Dak Prescott wanted to commit suicide. Terry Bradshaw came out saying, well, that just shows he's not a real leader and he's not strong.
Right.
And you have to avoid people like that and get to the root of the story. Everybody has those stories, like Karl Anthony Towns, who's a professional basketball player for the Minnesota Timberwolves right now. He had 7 members of his family die from COVID, and just getting the stories of loss like that out there can really, especially with sports having the far reach that it does, they can reach millions and millions of people where I can reach hundreds if I'm lucky. So I wanted to try and get their stories out there. And that's another reason that I really wanted to become a sports writer, to be able to use my words to get their stories out there.
And that's exactly what you've been doing. I know, like Simone Biles, right? Like the last Olympics, what do they call it? She's a gymnast, and when she's in the air,
She couldn't tell up from down.
Yeah, there's a term like flitter or something like that, jitters or something. And in front of the world, she had to say, I'm going through a mental health crisis and I need to step away and take care of myself. And even Michael Phelps, a swimmer, it's so awesome to me that like the people you're talking about and these other athletes are saying that they're talking about mental health, because I think society for so long looks up to them as like they're superhuman, and that they don't have depression. They don't have the things that affect us as everyday people. So I think it's so cool what you're doing.
Yes.
Yeah, I really want to, like I said, get that out there. I mean, Dak Prescott has millions of fans, millions of dollars, and if he can go through depression, anybody can do it.
Absolutely. And how inspiring, right? If he has the courage to come out and say that, well, then maybe me as an everyday person can tell my friends or my family or my coworkers, or my boss at work, like, hey, I'm really struggling here. I need some time off to get mentally better. And it's really fairly new that this sort of is happening in our culture. And it's because of people like you, Dominic, that aren't shying away from shining the light on it. So it's really awesome.
Yes, it's already tremendously inspiring hearing your story and the sports figures stories. What is your process for writing and analyzing sports and the tools you use to make it accessible?
There a lot of tools are right on the computer. Like you can use Narrator if you have a regular computer, things like that. I use JAWS. I could probably use the NVDA, but I've never really downloaded it. I know it has pretty much the same key commands as JAWS, but I purchased JAWS years ago. Might as well keep using it.
Yeah,
I just get a little more used to it every time I use it. I'm still not great with it. Unfortunately, there are a lot of websites that most sports writers use for research and things like that aren't accessible.
That's right.
And aren't willing to become accessible. So I do have to work around that a little bit. When it comes to writing, though, I just use regular Microsoft Word. The only issue I have is sometimes formatting or obviously putting in photos, things like that. So I do have editors that understand my few limitations I do have. So they're able to put in the pictures and the articles that need to be put in there and maybe fix a little bit of formatting here and there. But for the most part, I just use, Microsoft, and I use JAWS, and then I use a regular internet search. I've tried using specific programs like Grammarly, which a lot of people use to, check their grammar and things like that. But they're not accessible because everything's visual. And when I have written to them to see if there's a plugin to see if they have for accessibility issues, they say no, they don't have a plugin. They don't know if they're ever going to work on getting one either. So we'll see if they do or not. But right now they don't have anything that is accessible. So I can't really use Grammarly or other products like that many people do use.
Wow. So, and that's one of the things you also are doing. You are an advocate about accessibility in your field. What are some of the other things that you struggle with that you're advocating for change on?
Well, just a lot of platforms that don't allow accessibility. Like Yahoo, a lot of my work is done for fantasy football. So Yahoo is 100% accessible, and they're very friendly when it comes to being reached out to talk to them about different things. And I do have a friend who actually works with their Yahoo fantasy team now with accessibility. So that's actually getting even better than it was before. And it was already the best out there. There are some, companies which are pretty accessible, but not really. Like CBS, ESPN have some accessibility issues. They're not Yahoo, but they're not the worst either.
Oh, okay.
And then it's funny because for as much as NFL talks about how accessible their website is, which it is, it's pretty much 100% accessible. Their fantasy platform is 100% unaccessible, and they don't care. So you can't even do anything on NFL if you're blind. And the same thing with Sleeper. growing very big right now. They're one of the biggest redraft platforms out there for fantasy football, and they refuse to even talk about accessibility. My friend, who, like I said, now works for Yahoo Accessibility and stuff, he reached out to them a number of times in the past, and they ended up saying we don't care, and they just blocked him. I've reached out to them. They just don't even get back to me anymore. A lot of my friends and a lot of people on my behalf have reached out to them, and they don't get back to them either. So they're just not interested in doing it anyway. They're just interested in making as much money as possible and not having to spend a little bit of money to make even more money for accessibility. So they just don't care. And there are some companies out there that just don't care. There are some companies that do and just don't know how to do it. So it's the ones that want to do it and just don't know how to do it that you need to be able to reach out to. The ones that just don't want to do it, they're never going to change. And you just can't, just like, somebody being a Democrat or Republican, you can give your opinion to them, whatever side it is, and you're never going to change their mind because they're always going to be on the other side.
Yeah, that's for sure.
And to me, that's maddening because people don't realize that every new thing that you make accessible for people with disabilities and blindness in particular, doubles it ends up being this new exciting thing for sighted people. Like as goofy as it is, because it's not computer related, just having a ramp up to the front door, everybody's like, oh, why would you do that? Well, people who have those ramps the sighted people end up using them almost more than the people in the wheelchairs, because they have to move things in and out of the house that would be rough going downstairs. And there's just hundreds of things like that would really help everybody out once they're... So part of it is people with disabilities are pioneering a ton of stuff for everybody.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And absolutely. I mean, the disabled community is 20% of the world's population. 1.2 billion people in the world have disabilities. 60 million in this country have disabilities. So if you're not becoming accessible, you're taking away basically 1/5 of your potential customers anyway.
Yes.
And you're maybe even more than that, because if Penn can't use something, then Moses, why are you going to be willing to use it even though you're sighted? So you're gonna have those people that are like, well, if my blind friends or disabled friends can't use it, why am I going to use this? Then you're taking away even more of your customer base.
That is so true. Dominic, can you share some of your top milestones that you've had thus far in your career?
I've worked at a lot of small sites. I've worked at some bigger sites, which was really exciting. I wrote for the Philadelphia Eagles for a year. I was able to do all of their game previews as well as their season previews. And I did quite a few enterprise articles about different cheerleaders that they had there and what they were going through. And it was really interesting to get to know the cheerleaders, because everybody just sees them on the sidelines, but especially at least for the Philadelphia Eagles, because I haven't met any other ones. But they have a couple that are going, they're in doctorate programs right now. They have 3 or 4 who are elementary school teachers or middle school teachers. They have other ones that are, one is a traveling dentist. She goes around to like third world countries and does dental work for third world countries for people that can't afford dental, surgery and dental work and things like that. So there's quite a few smart, ladies and women that are doing this just so they can get through school and everything, because they're working on. So doing articles like that has always been wonderful. Working at The Athletic has been great. I met a great editor, Nando DeFina, who actually just left there, but I'm still working with The Athletic, which is one of the biggest sites in the world. So getting to be able to write for them for fantasy football has been great. And just the people I've been able to meet. I was able to meet Charles Barkley at the sports media convention. He was always my favorite basketball player growing up. So him and I, spent the night chatting in the bar and everything, and got a picture with him and everything. I was just down there again this year. Was able to meet, Joe Buck. One of my favorite movies of all time. I think it's one of the greatest movies of all time. It's called Hoop Dreams. It's a documentary about basketball, 2 inner city kids in Chicago, and their journey to try and become NBA players. They did a special 30-year anniversary thing at the convention I was at, and Arthur Agee, one of the players who was in the movie, was there So we got to talk to him and ask him questions about the movie and about what's been going on since then. We got to meet Joe Buck, and just got to meet a lot of people. Some of my people I call closest friends now are Ryan Wilson from CBS, Jason Lockenfora from CBS, Mark Sessler from NFL Network. Chris Wessling was the first one to really take an interest in me, and he reached out to me. And before he passed away from cancer a couple years ago, him and I were, very close, and we used to talk quite a bit through email. And I was one of the last people to email him. He responded to one of my emails, and a week later he had to go in the hospital, and he passed away from his second bout of cancer. So just different people in the industry that have really been willing to, even if they couldn't help me, just be willing to reach out to me and talk with me. Ian Eagle, him and I have been talking for the past year. Kenny Albert and I have been talking for the past, month or two now. So it's been really wonderful getting to meet all these different people in the industry that really take a position to help, to either want to help you or just care about you. Jason Lockenfora and I, like I said, we've been talking a couple times a week now for over a year. And because of my story and my inspiration, and because of what he wants to try and help me do, he actually decided to become a kidney donor himself down in Baltimore. So he's trying to become a kidney donor for a friend of his who has a 4-year-old daughter who needs a kidney now.
I know. That's a horrible place to leave it, but that's where we're going to leave it. Man, what an incredible story from Dominic. If you want more of his story, you're going to have to come back next week and listen to part 2 as he dives more into this kidney transplant journey and just more of the incredible things that he is doing as somebody who is blind, who's working in the sports industry. Just wanted to bring a couple things to your attention. The Shine Music Festival is going to be happening on August 24th, and we're super excited to be partnering with Sean Satterfield to kind of bring After Sight and the Blind Chick to this event. We've got quite a few guests that are going to be on the Blind Chick podcast, like Ted Taquichi. Sean Satterfield has already been on here, and we're going to have quite a few more guests as we get closer and closer to this event. And then afterwards, we're going to be posting that live episode, and it'll just be fantastic. It's going to be so much fun, so make sure you get your tickets. The first part of the day is free, but make sure that if you want to attend any of the evening concerts, those are a ticketed event. So make sure you go check out Shine Festival for more information. All right. If you guys have questions, comments, concerns, please email us at feedback@aftersight.org, or you can give us a call at 720-712-8856. Don't forget to share, like, and subscribe this to all of your friends and family. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to others. It's good for your soul.